Welcome, friends of the show. We are back with another episode of the Ferris Wheel Classic Rock Show. I'm your host, Kennedy. I'm flying solo today. As for Dr. Clark and Medicated Wheeler, well, they are somewhere on a farm cultivating seeds for hay. And they want to make hay barrels because they want to try to find a needle in the haystack. I'd also like to have a big thanks for your emails, suggestions, and your support on our social media platforms. Continue to email us at theferriswheelshow@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Listen to a new show every week. Just tune into Wednesday evenings, sometimes 6 o'clock, sometimes 7, New York City time, on Cap City Beats, located at www.capcitybeats.ca. Okay, buckle up for some serious rock talk. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, today I'm going to talk to you about the Van Halen lineup changes, the complete guide. Now this is an article that was published on ultimateclassicrock.com by an excellent writer by the name of Martin Keelty, I hope I pronounced his name properly. He came up with this guide, and I'm going to summarize it in a way that is going to show you that I still prefer David Lee Roth over Sammy Hagar. I don't think I need to establish that any further. But I do want to read a quote, actually, of Alex Van Halen compares David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar. So this was actually done before the passing of the late, great Eddie Van Halen. Alex Van Halen celebrated the strange chemistry Van Halen had with David Lee Roth and compared the strengths of the original singer with his replacement, Sammy Hagar. In an interview with Modern Drummer, newly published, and like I said, conducted before the death of Eddie Van Halen, Alex was asked how important it was to have a producer in the studio. His answer was, part of it was the conflict between the band and Dave, he said. One of the things that made everything work was that we came from opposite ends of the spectrum. Dave was vaudeville. Ed and I were coming from Cream, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. So, having that strange chemistry is what made it work, oddly enough. But you do need a mediator. Otherwise, we would never have gotten anything done. He added, if Dave came in with a song, I would respect how they heard it. And then is the old trick. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And that means, okay, I will listen to you, but then I'm going to make it mine. And by the end of the process, it will sound nothing like what you hummed me. Alex Van Halen also noted that Hagar has a great rhythmic sense, and of course, that voice. Dave was much more of a poet. Dave is creative. 90% of it is garbage, but that 10% is worth it. He said, sometimes thought, what planet did you come from? When it came to Roth, that's what the drummer pointed out. And his last words were, hey, we grew up together. So, in reality, we all know Diamond Dave was eccentric and had the whole showmanship down pat. And Sammy Hagar, we knew, had more of that coarse and that raw rocker voice. Is one better than the other? Some people say, nah, they're both the same. I disagree. Of course, David Lee Roth is better, but who am I to judge, right? I'm just biased, and I've at least admitted that. But let's move on with the complete guide. So 1974, the band was actually Alex Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen, Mark Stone, and David Lee Roth. Before there was Van Halen, there was Mammoth, the primarily covers-oriented group that started morphing into the Van Halen we all know and love after David Lee Roth joined the lineup. Bassist Mike Stone, a holdover from the Mammoth days, did not last long in the new incarnation, and he's kept a pretty low profile since leaving the band, although he did surface on eBay during the summer of 2013 to sell a custom-built bass. So, moving on to 74 to 85. Here's the band. It's Alex Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen, Diamond David Lee Roth, and Michael Anthony. Once Michael Anthony stepped in for Stone on bass, the band was off and running, starting with its 1978 self-titled debut, Van Halen. They enjoyed consistent success on the pop and rock charts, releasing a string of gold and platinum albums between 78 to 84. In 85, with the band's commercial profile at an all-time high, long-simmering internal tensions boiled over in the aftermath, frontman David Lee Roth departed to pursue a promising solo career, leaving the band with uncertain task of finding a new lead singer who could fill Roth's flamboyant shoes. Now, let's just put this into perspective. We don't know the whole story. We could assume, that maybe Roth was the problem. We could assume that maybe Eddie was the problem. But maybe let's just call devil's advocate and say they were both wrong. So let's agree to disagree that they were both wrong. And let's move forward to 1985 to 1996. Between this timeline, you got Alex and Eddie, so the two brothers, Van Halen, Michael Anthony, and the Red Rocker, Sammy Hagar. So replacing Roth proved a difficult task for Van Halen. It's a difficult task for any band to replace a lead singer. When you have certain bands like Van Halen that have a frontman like David Lee Roth that is very prominent and the showmanship is there, you can't replace him. It's like trying to replace Freddie Mercury from Queen. You can't replace him because he was the frontman. He is the showmanship. His showmanship wasn't as good as David Lee Roth, but one could learn from that. So let's move on. After months of considering various possibilities, the lineup featured several part-time singers, which included Patti Smythe and Eric Martin of Mr. Big. A chance of meeting a car mechanic led Eddie to offer the position to former Montrose frontman turned solo artist, Red Rocker Sammy Hagar. And there, my friends, this is where albums started to come out, which was 5150, which was their first album to go number one on the Billboard charts. And for the next decade, Hagar fronted version of the group. Basically, he was Van Hagar. That's what fans have dubbed the whole name whenever he was there. And he had albums like 5150, OE 812, and actually a decent album, which is For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. So spell that out, F-U-C-K, and you let me know what you get. So moving forward to 1996. 1996 was interesting because now the Red Rocker is gone and we have the two brothers, Alex and Eddie. We got Michael Anthony back on bass and we have Mitch Malloy. All right, so this is a very interesting turn. This is kind of similar to where Motley Crue went with Vince Neil leaving and then they brought in John Corabi. So how did this turn out for the Halens? Well, it ended up being more of a footnote than anything else. But our list of Van Halen lineup changes would be remiss without a mention of Mitch Malloy. Impressively, man singer who once seemed destined to follow in Hagar's footsteps by going from a solo act to VH lead singer. In fact, after jamming with the guys and allegedly being told by the manager Ray Daniels that he had the job, Malloy watched the gig slip right out of his hands. What happened? I don't know. You tell me. Let's ask Alex if we ever get him into the studio. I bet you Dr. Clark would say, all right, so here's the thing. And then Wheeler would be like, basically, they didn't like each other. So let's move forward. 1996, here we are again. Alex, Eddie, Mike, Diamond Dave. Man, I love Diamond Dave. Did I mention I am a big fan of David Lee Roth? I follow him on Instagram and Twitter. God love him. So, what was 1996? Well, after a platinum streak decade of fronting one of the biggest rock bands on the planet, Hagar, depending on who you ask, either quit or was fired from Van Halen. And why'd I call him Hagar? I don't know, it's Hagar. So, opening the door for an exceedingly brief but much publicized reunion with Roth. Sadly for the fans, like myself, who'd long hoped to see Van Halen's original singer back in the fold, His second stint with the group only produced a pair of new songs on 1996's Best of Volume 1. After a disastrous appearance on that year's MTV Music Video Awards, Roth was once more on the outs. Okay, it didn't really go that well. So, how did 1997 to 1999 go around? Alex, Eddie, Michael Anthony. Notice the consistency here. There's always these same three. And who they added? Gary Cherone. All right, I'm in. I'm interested. Let's see what happens. So obviously forced to find a new singer, Van Halen repeated what it had done with Hagar, reaching for another known quantity from the rock charts. Former Extreme vocalist Gary Cherone, who had a hell of a set of pipes, and he became one of the more eclectic outfits in the genre during the early 90s. While many fans had only heard Extreme's softer side, obviously specifically going with the "more than words is all you have to do." So, we all know that song with, what's his name? The Nuno Betancourt, I'm sorry. So, Cherone came in, was capable of, belting out the hard stuff. And unfortunately, disappointing lack of radio-ready material helped conspire to make VH3 a relative flop. And after a disappointingly attended tour, this lineup only managed to record a few demos for an aborted follow-up before parting ways. So here we are. Where does this leave us now? So 97 to 99, Gary Cherone experience is only about 2 years. It's unfortunate because he does have a fantastic voice. So we're fast forwarding a couple of years, 5 years at most, to 2004. We got Alex, Eddie, Michael, and Sammy Hagar came back. Given the animosity that arose in the wake of Hagar's departure from Van Halen, few would have guessed he might return to the lineup one day. But that's exactly what happened in 2004, when the band reunited with its second singer for a pair of new songs, bundled into the Best of Both Worlds compilation and a tour. The good vibes didn't last long. However, as any Van Halen fan could tell you, the 2004 tour was marred by sloppy performance and bad behavior. And after the final show, which culminated with Eddie smashing his guitar on stage, the band entered a lengthy hiatus. So, I guess Eddie was trying to emulate Kurt Cobain, what he did on Saturday Night Live to destroy his guitar, and here we are with the Red Rocker, that the reunion didn't work out too well. And I know a lot of fans, don't get me wrong, that they love Red Rocker over Diamond Dave, and that's okay. I respect their opinion, that's okay. As long as they respect the fact that Diamond Dave started it. Diamond Dave is Van Roth. Let's just keep it at that. Okay, so now that we've, caressed my ego and saying to me, Kennedy, you're 100% correct, Roth is king, we're going to move on to 2007. So 2007 introduced a very interesting lineup. Alex Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen, Wolfgang Van Halen, so Eddie's son, and David Lee Roth. So no Michael Anthony. Well, that's sad, because as a kid growing up, I always knew Michael Anthony. He's actually the only member, besides Eddie and Alex, that was there and recorded all of their studio albums with the band. He's been there through all the lead singer changes. And now, the final reunion, where they finally brought back Diamond Dave, there's no Roth. But hey, Wolfgang, he's actually pretty good. He did all right. So, how did this happen? Well, Eddie was actually, enjoying guitar god status during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And he also largely withdrew from the public eye, earning a reputation for being an eccentric recluse who was just as likely to debut new material at an unannounced club performance. So here we are. The post-Van Halen 3 years wore on, and fans grew impatient for an album of new material. Rumors ran rampant, and none were more persistent than the one saying David Lee Roth was back in the band. Finally, my prayers are answered, and in the fall of 2007, the reunion came true. Unfortunately, it was minus Michael Anthony, who had been kicked out. and he was even temporarily scrubbed from the band's website in favor of Eddie's sons, Wolfgang. And while the band's 2007 tour didn't immediately lead to new music, Van Halen did eventually return to the studio with Roth, releasing their 12th studio LP album, which was called A Different Kind of Truth, and that was released in February of 2012. And actually, that is on there as one of those top albums of comebacks, where bands had broken up with the original members, and then finally the original members come back, lead singer, and look at that. Miracle. It happens. So, 2008, what's happening with Sammy Hagar? Well, he's in the band called Chickenfoot. In French, they call it Pied Poule. So, Chickenfoot consists of Sammy Hagar, Michael Anthony, legendary guitarist Joe Satriani, and, hey, Chad Smith, the Will Ferrell lookalike from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Hagar and Anthony responded to their ouster by performing a new supergroup, Chickenfoot, with guitarist Joe Satriani and Red Hot Chili Peppers drummers Chad Smith. They released studio albums in 2009, 2011, and toured behind them. Although Smith Chili Peppers' commitments in 2011 meant that, hey, legendary Kenny Aronoff occupied the drum stool for a while. He's the hardest hitting man in the drum industry. Look that up. And he's also John Mellencamp's former drummer. And when he was John Mellencamp's drummer, John Mellencamp was actually successful. Write that down. Although the band has not officially broken up, their respective schedules have prevented them from working together since then. So now we're at 2014 till present day, 2021. Sammy Hagar, very busy man. There's a reason why they call him the Red Rocker, because he just keeps going and going and going. And God bless him, at his age, he's still in shape. He could still sing, still perform, and he's got his vocals, which is fantastic. I don't think he's doing backflips like David Lee Roth is. I don't think actually David Lee Roth is doing backflips anymore, but hey, who am I to judge? So, 2014 to present, Sammy Hagar and the Circle, which consists of Sammy Hagar, Michael Anthony, Jason Bonham, who is the son of Led Zeppelin's drummer John Bonham, late great John Bonham, and Vic Johnson. So with Chickenfoot on hiatus, Hagar and Anthony continued working together. They picked Vic Johnson, who served as Hagar's guitarist in the Waboritis, and Jason Bonham. Their first year of touring, as they say in Nova Scotia, resulted in a live album, 2015's At Your Service, and their first studio effort, The Space Between, which arrived in 2019. I do recommend you go listen to it, and I'm pretty sure Wheeler will probably do a vinyl review on it soon on our next episode when we all get together, the three of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to me for these 20 minutes or so. And as your host, Kennedy, from the Ferris Wheel Classic Rock Show, I also want to give a big shout out to my co-hosts and co-creators, Dr. Ian Clark and Medicated Stephen Wheeler, because without them, the show would not be as funny as having each other pick at one another. And if it wasn't for you fans out there to support us and give us the likes on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we wouldn't be here without you. I'm Ferris Kennedy. I want to say thank you to our dedicated listeners. You're not only our listeners, but you also become our friends. Keep in touch, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Au revoir.